What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pure Evil MMA. I'm your host, as always, Evil Eddie, and we are so happy to welcome back. After one of my favorite weekends so far of 2019, we got Rodney James Edgar, who, as a matter of fact, there this weekend. You guys might have seen him. You might have heard him on the post-fight press conference. What's going on, Rodney? How you doing?
Good, man. Good. A little stressed out. Just, reading about narrative theory for grad school. Fucking word to the wise out there. Grad school sucks. Okay. Should any of you ever try to go that route? It fucking sucks.
Well, you're always working on something, doing climbing that ladder over there. So I can only imagine the schedule that you got going on, and I have no idea how you fit mixed martial arts and journalism into it all. So, man, I got to give you a lot of credit. So let's jump into the heat of things, man. UFC 235. I mean, where do you want to start with everything? Because there's a lot to unpack here.
There is, man. Every single fight has its own story unto itself that you can make a whole episode around. But I don't know. I mean, I guess from the top down, I mean, the whole weekend was crazy. I mean, I went to the press conference they had a few weeks ago, and I've pretty much just been obsessed with this card ever since, because I went to all the other events, including the event itself. Leading up to it, I went to, media day, etc. You kick us off here.
All right, so let's start from the top. Jon Bones Jones is going in against Anthony Smith, and there's a lot that happened in the fight. But before we jump into that fight, there was a lot of people that actually thought Anthony Smith had a shot here, and I even spoke with Houston Alexander, who trained with Anthony Smith, and
wow.
he was telling us that this is a guy that has trained with some of the best. He's been in the game for years and years, and it's usually the guys or the girls like Holly Holm that you don't expect to win. The odds were crazy against Jon Jones, and when the odds are like that, you would expect somebody like Jon to, just run through. But that was not the case in this fight whatsoever. And Anthony Smith put it best in the post-fight press conference. He was like, it's not like he landed any significant shots. It was more like he just nullified me. I wasn't able to get off. I wasn't able to get started there. So did you see that? And what did you think going into the fight before it started?
Yeah. Okay, so before it started, I mean, the odds were crazy. So I put a little bit of money down on Anthony Smith just because it was money that I was willing to part with. But had I won, it was definitely going to be worth the payday. But yeah, I kind of felt the same things, that Houston was talking about, that, and Jon Jones even said that himself in the media scrum at the open workouts. He said, look, a guy that's got nothing to lose, he's going to come in there with reckless abandon. He's going to take chances. And, Anthony just didn't do that. But backing up just a little bit more to before the open workouts, I kind of felt the same way. I kind of felt like, this guy, he's ferocious. He's a monster. If he's fighting at his absolute best, he could beat Jon Jones, but that's not what we saw. I mean, that's not the guy that showed up in the cage. But I'll tell you, the week prior, Thiago Santos and Jan Blachowicz, or however you pronounce it, that one was an eye-opener because it kind of jogged my memory. And then I was like, oh, yeah, these guys fought at middleweight. Thiago Santos and Anthony Lionheart Smith, and he fucked Lionheart Smith up, and you could say, well, he was in the wrong weight class. Well, I mean, was Thiago Santos in the wrong weight class too? Because he's now a 205er, and they're talking about putting him against Jon Jones. And I think he actually stands a better chance, if I'm honest. But I digress. Here's where I really got off the Anthony Smith hype train. I'm not going to lie. Nothing against him or his coaches, but when I was at open workouts, I was there front and center. I'm talking like I was on the stage, like I was filming, I was taking photos, and I was just watching the – and I get it. They're not going to come out there and show you all the looks that, that they have in their game plan, but there was just certain things that they were doing that I just thought, you're wasting your time. Like, he was doing some grappling where, his coach was like starting off of his back, and I'm like, why would you even drill that? Jon Jones is never going to be on his back unless you knock him out, in which case you're going to have to worry about jiu-jitsu, but I just thought that was a little weird. And then also, this is just really technical stuff. I'm not a champion by any means, but I am a martial artist, and I do see certain things that I kind of go, oh, I don't know about that, man. Like the way he was blocking, he was doing a really traditional sort of block like that. I go, man, your the side of your head is open, your body is wide open. That's ripe for John Jones because, I mean, he if you got your hands up in a traditional block like this while he's throwing a combo, he's going to sneak up on you. He's going to use that go-go gadget arm to sneak right around your block and clock you right behind the ear, or he's going to come up the middle with some kind of freaky-deaky kick or knee or something, which we saw. We saw some really outrageous like body kicks that just sent Anthony flying back across the cage. That was the moment for me where I said definitively, I was like, he's going to lose. I know he was definitely going to lose. And then, once he got in there, I really expected him to pull the trigger, and he just didn't.
That's exactly how I felt. That first round, even throughout the fight, I was always at the edge of my seat, but it was really in that first and second round where I was like, all right, anything can really happen here. And then you just kind of felt like Anthony Smith was allowing John to play his game, and we saw success, a lot of success, as we usually see with John Jones, throwing those kicks and even spin kicks and stuff like that. And Anthony Smith, man, in his last couple of fights leading up to this, that got him that shot, that got people excited about Anthony Smith finally after all this time, we did not see from Anthony here in this fight. And it was like I keep saying this, it's not like John was doing anything crazy. It was like Anthony was allowing John to pull off the kicks and be able to push forward. And John was just like, all right, bro, is this what the fight's going to be? All right, well, I'm just going to ride the wave. And that's exactly what we saw. And there was a part in the fight that everyone's talking about, and you know what I'm about to bring up, is this kick. We've seen this a lot before in mixed martial arts. What did you think when you were sitting there watching that? Did you think that Anthony was going to say, all right, DQ? Well, here, let me ask you this. Should it be up to the fighter to, make a call in that position?
You mean you're talking about the illegal knee?
The illegal knee to the head, yeah. That's what it was.
And then they were also saying there was an illegal kick, which John at the post-fight presser said that it was to the body. When I saw it on the broadcast, of course, that's not the best vantage point, but I thought it was to the body. I didn't think it looked like kicked him in the head. The knee, on the other hand, I think you should leave it up to the fighter. And the reason is because when you have two human beings in combat, a guy is, he's going to know whether it can continue or not. Like, I mean, if he's completely out of it and the doctor says, hey, this guy, cannot continue, which we see happen all the time, whether it's from an illegal technique or a cut, especially cuts, we see that a lot. But whenever you have a guy who is cognizant, he is aware, he can answer you, and he says, look, I'm good to go. I like that because, in this sport, it's wacky, but the belt can actually change hands that way. And had he said, well, I can't continue, he would have won the belt. And nobody wants to become a champion. And nobody wants to win a fight like that.
Can't feel good about it.
Become a champion.
No, you're not going to feel good about it. And I didn't think for a second that Anthony was going to say, I can't go on. They did take 2 points from him, but it was at that point where it was just like, all right, this fight's clearly over. John is just going to ride this out, become the champion or defend the title. But, a lot of people out there are just saying, like, there is no one out there that we think John is going to have an issue with. So should he move up to heavyweight? Should Santos finally take the fight? So at that point, what do you have to say with that? Because, it really does just seem like there's no one out there for John.
Yeah, well, John said that he wants to fight 4 times in 2019. I heard, he said that. I actually posted something on Cage Side Press about that little soundbite from him. He said he wants to fight 4 times this year. So he's already fought once. The way I see it, if he fights Thiago Santos, Dominic Reyes, should he win, and then, Johnny Walker's another guy that comes to mind. Of course, Johnny Walker I mentioned last because he actually said that he doesn't, he wants to fight a few more fights before he's ready to fight for a title. And then he said that to me at Media Day. He said it to all of us backstage at the press conference. And Dana White even said that at the press conference. He said, look, we're not looking to put this guy in there with anybody from the top 5 or anything like that anytime soon. So I think they feel like he's still, and we've seen in the past where they've done that with guys, rush them, like Cody Garbrandt's a perfect example. Now you got a guy who's lost 3 in a row by knockout. What the hell do you do with him? As former champion, but they kind of peaked him a little too early. But we come back to that one. That's a whole nother fight from that card. But yeah, those are the three threats that I see right now. Dana, oh man, I wish I would have talked to him at the presser. I just didn't really have any questions for him, but I thought about it right as he was leaving, because the last thing that Dana White said was, we have some really interesting, amazing things coming this year, and I can't wait to announce them. I've been dying to ask him, though, about doing something cross-promotional. I know it's a long shot, but how badass would that be to see Bellator's champ Ryan Bader come back over and do and challenge and rematch John Jones? Because he's a way better fighter than he was. So I don't know. That's a pipe dream, but I know a lot of other people feel the same way. A lot of other people have mentioned that, so it is worth saying. And then, like I said, those other three guys in the UFC are definitely credible threats.
Let me ask you this. All right,
John feels like if he wins, 4 fights this year, then he will solidify himself as the greatest of all time. So then, who knows? Maybe he wants to move on from the sport, or maybe go up to heavyweight. Or
it's gotten to the point where it's like, what do we do with this guy at this point? So let me ask you this about that illegal knee to the head. We actually saw in this press conference. What was it? The State Athletic Commission that came out, or who was it that came out and was like,
Bob.
What did you think about that? Because I kind of found that kind of weird, and in situations like that, it's really frustrating. And they completely They talked about the Ben Askren thing, and I believe they did talk about the John Jones thing. What did you think about them bringing him out there to discuss that serious situation so soon without actually digesting it, or thinking about what to say, without discussing it later on that night?
I think that the fans and the media and anybody else from the peanut gallery maybe was I don't know, maybe they thought that they were going to try to run away with that narrative and create sort of a false narrative or something about what they thought happened. And so I think that was perhaps the UFC PR. Maybe that was their way of just sort of nipping that in the bud. Like, hey, let's go ahead and get this from an expert, just like you see on the NFL broadcast, where they'll have a referee pipe in every time that a flag gets thrown or something gets challenged or a flag doesn't get thrown. So yeah, a lot of people have talked about doing the same thing with a ref, maybe sort of adding them to the UFC broadcast. And so I saw that as kind of a similar move. But yeah, it was a little weird. It was kind of like, I didn't have anything for Bennett, because I just really didn't. I was like, I understand everything that happened, and even whether or not I agree with all of it, it matters not. We know that, like Robbie, for example, is not going to appeal. That's just without question. We know that's not going to happen. And then as far as the John Jones thing, I think, the right call was done there. And apparently the 2 points thing, I guess that's another thing too. They wanted to bring Bob Bennett in to explain, because I didn't know this, but yeah, that's a mandatory 2 points. Now, I was at one of their hearings, I believe the first Conor and Khabib one, and one of the issues they addressed apart from it, because they address other issues at those meetings, and one of those was the new rule set. And so I'm just as confused as anybody. I thought, I don't know. I'm so confused about what's this downed opponent or what's not. But I also see where John is coming from. He felt like the body language of Anthony was that he was coming up, which he kind of was, but then he stopped. And so John thought he was going to time a perfect knee, which didn't end up happening. He kind of threw it before Anthony got all the way up, and therefore his hand was still down. I don't know, man. It wouldn't have made any difference.
I don't want to jump out of order, but while we're talking about the controversial side of things, people are going to want to know what our take is and what your take is on the Ben Askren versus Robbie Lawler fight. Now, going into this fight, it was huge for Ben Askren, and what a welcome to the UFC Robbie Lawler gave Ben. It looked like he was out. After he got picked up, slammed, and smashed a couple times, it looked like Ben was out for a split second. He was able to recover and then was able to take control over Robbie. Now, he got him up against the cage in a really awkward position, a position where it was, especially from Herb's angle, it was kind of hard to see Robbie's face. In that moment, what were you thinking, and what did you think about that call? because Robbie immediately protested the fight. He immediately protested that call, and he even had a conversation with Herb. And like you said, he's such a stand-up guy. He's not gonna, flip out or try to protest. So, what did you think about that and how it was handled?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because today I saw something that I guess Dana White had shared, and then I shared it on Twitter, where you actually hear the audio for the first time. The exchange between Robbie Lawler and Herb Dean, and it sounds to me like Herb Dean is actually kind of sort of admitting to Robbie, like, oh shit, man, like I thought you were out. He's like, I can't believe I did that. He said something to that effect, like, oh man, like, and then Herb is like, fuck, like he kind of knew he made a mistake, but at the same time, maybe he didn't. To me, when I saw that arm go, I thought Ben Askren was going to let go and that Robbie Lawler's body was just going to slump to the canvas. That's what I thought. We've seen that so many times where a guy doesn't tap and then he just goes out. I thought that's what we're going to see. But then he jumped right at the protest. Now, during a flash knockdown or flash knockout, rather, that's understandable. If a guy doesn't think he was out and he comes back to real quick. But Dana White also made a great point about that. If you got choked out, you're not going to immediately jump up like that. Anyone who's ever been choked out will tell you, even if you don't pass out. I've been choked before many, 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 many times. Happens probably every single time I train, like I might get choked out, tap, and then it takes me a few seconds to get my bearings back, So I don't know, but truth be told, if I'm Herb Dean, that's what I saw. I saw the guy's arm just go limp, thought that he was completely out, probably would have made the same call. And this is the other thing I harped on too at the time, and then I asked Ben about it at the press conference. I was like, look, I didn't see Robbie being able to get out of that anyway. Did you see the video that's going around of Ben Askren taking 2 watermelons, and squeezing them until he burst them both? I mean, like, that's insane.
And you got to realize the position that Robbie was in. He could have snapped his neck if he wanted to. That was a really awkward position.
Yeah, and I mean, he's got such a tight squeeze, and if he didn't want to let go, and then of course on Robbie's end, he, at the presser, he told me, well, hey, I was just going to let him tire his arms out, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't see it, because it's not like you had to exert a bunch of energy to do that. It's not like a guillotine where you're like pulling up and like you're putting all this effort. It's kind of like he's kind of using his body to sort of just rest on your head. And anything that you try to do, any move that you try to make, all you're doing is really just forcing your neck into the guy's arm. But but he had, I don't know if it was more like a blood choke, but again, even still, the more that the guy on the bottom struggles, the less likely is to get out of it. And again, the guy who's on top, he's got all his body weight on you. So I don't know.
This is the big talk that I think needs to be made, needs to be figured out, and we need to get a yes or a no from the higher ups. It's, should there be an instant replay in mixed martial arts? And if so, you can't give them too much time, because you don't want that guy to recover too quick. You don't want to give him too much time. So should there be an instant replay? And if so, how long should it last?
I wish they would, man. God, I wish they would. It drives me nuts. I mean, yeah, I wish they could pause the action on that, look at it and go, oh man, you know what? We made the wrong call. The guy wasn't out. So let's restart in that same position, put the clock back right where it was at the time. And of course, it's not a perfect solution, because, yeah, that does give him time to catch his breath and get his bearings back, think about what he's going to do. But to me, it's better than the way that it turned out. And then the other option is run it back. That's what Dana White wants to do. I don't think Ben Askren or Robbie are interested in that, nor do I think anyone else is, quite frankly. I just don't think there's anything to prove. I think both guys, I thought they were going to stop the fight when Ben was getting smashed, and I mean, you probably could have, and there wouldn't have been a ton of controversy there, had you stopped it. But he weathered the storm, and he did come back and get into a good position. He fought really hard to get there. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all I saw was an awesome fight. Yeah, it's a controversial finish, and boy, does it have people really split down the middle. I don't think I've ever seen anything so polarizing, because you don't have the majority of people going, oh, he wasn't out, that was an early stoppage. It's really split down the middle. You got people saying that it was good, and others that say it's not. I say that nullifies each other. Like I said, both guys put on an awesome fight. One of the best fights I've seen all year, maybe ever. Just for that short-lived action that we saw. All hell broke loose. It was a dogfight. It was great. It's what you come to expect, and what a welcome for Ben Askren, because, in a way, yeah, it would have been a little tragic had he just come in there and gotten smashed in 10 seconds in his debut. But then, because now he brings new life into the welterweight division. I mean, he stole the show. I told you about that press conference a few weeks ago. You probably watched it. I mean, the one with the hecklers that wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
Ben stole the show there. He was amazing all week. The open workouts. He did the dual workout with Tyron, and when they went to interview Tyron, he joined him for that, and it was just like he really endeared himself to the fans and the media. And even Dana White, I think he claims that Dana hates him, but Dana is adamant that that's not the case, and I believe Dana, because every time I see them interact, I think Dana kind of gets a kick out of him.
Yeah, I think Ben's just kind of playing along with that script, going with what Ariel is asking him to do. He was like, just go along with it. People enjoy that. And, I saw Dana at the press conference going, what is this guy talking about? We spoke backstage. Like, this guy is out of his mind. And, I enjoy that back and forth between Ben and Dana. So you brought up Woodley. Let's immediately jump over to that, because, man, I can't believe that Woodley was shut out every single round, every single second, didn't have any control time in this fight. Very impressive win for Usman. But was it? I mean, what do you think was wrong with Woodley? What did you think was going on with Woodley? It didn't seem like he was able to start going. And people are saying, oh, he's doing a wrap, he's doing this. I don't think that really has that much of an effect. If anything, I probably think that's healthy to, kind of have a little bit of distraction. But I don't know. What is your take on this? And what did you see from Woodley?
Yeah, I think it does. And I asked him as much because, I'm a musician. You're also a musician. So, it's not just about your time. And I mean, it doesn't really take a physical toll on you necessarily to do music and do all these other things. But it does. It does, I think, shift your focus. I mean, we saw that with Ronda. We've seen it now with Conor McGregor.
True.
Because, if you listen to Joe Rogan or Brendan Shaw break this down, it's like, what do you think Usman was doing when Woodley's doing these TV shows with TMZ, or he's in the studio? Usman is in the gym. He's grinding. He's hungry. And I think that's the difference. When you get somebody like Ronda or Conor or Tyron, who's been a champ for a long, long time, they can say what they want, but I think, maybe they do sort of lose a little bit of that hunger, because it's definitely not the same hunger that they had when they were on the climb. Johny Hendricks is another great example. Johny Hendricks was ferociously hungry on his way up the ladder. I mean, you just knew this guy was going to be champion. And then after that, I mean, his career was just tanked. One of the worst downfalls we've ever seen, if not the worst. But with Tyron, going back to the open workouts again, what was it? One of the biggest takeaways that I got from him and from Ben, who both commented on it. They said, how does Marty win? How does Marty from Nebraska win? What's he going to do? Is he going to out wrestle Tyron? Is he going to take him down? Is he going to out strike him? Is he going to out cardio him? Well, they were sort of laughing about it, yeah, right. He doesn't have the ability. Well, guess what? That's exactly what he did. He did everything better. And I'm actually very surprised that some people didn't like that fight, and I don't understand those people. I had a buddy text me and was like, man, I can't believe I paid for that pay-per-view. It was awful. And I was just like, what in the hell was this guy watching? And then, after the presser, and I had a chance to sort of digest everything and decompress, and I looked at Twitter and I saw all these people that were just like, man, that pay-per-view sucked. And I'm like, I don't get it. I do not understand where they're coming from. I thought that the Tyron Woodley-Kamaru Usman fight was incredible. I don't see how anybody could consider that a boring fight. But yeah, Usman impressed, did everything right, and supposedly had a fractured foot. And I just knew the fact that he had, this huge opportunity to make history as the first fighter from the entire continent of Africa to become a UFC champion. I knew that he was gonna win that belt, or he was gonna die trying.
I'm glad that you brought up Johny Hendricks. I think that's a really good comparison when we talk about this fight when it comes to Woodley, because for both of them, guys came into mixed martial arts as wrestlers, and then they really fell in love with their knockout power. They fell in love with their striking. And in this fight, I felt like Tyron was just waiting for that one shot. He wasn't he wasn't using his wrestling. He wasn't it just felt like he was just trying to get that one lucky shot throughout the fight, and he just couldn't get it going. He couldn't get started. He wasn't even really throwing any punches. And we even seen Usman get him pushed up against the cage and almost pretty much rock him a couple of times during this fight. This is going on in mixed martial arts for a while, and I think Woodley has fell victim to be one of those guys that fell in love too much with his striking and that one punch power. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. That was one of the biggest things that contributed to the failure of Johny Hendricks was that he got away from the wrestling, and because you look at like his fight with Carlos Condit, for example, like that was the X factor. Like that was the only reason he won. It was the difference maker, because that was an absolute war. But then, from there, he became this, guy who was just sort of more known for being a striker because he had built up such, hype with those knockouts. And I don't know, man. Tyron thinks that he's going to be able to run it back, but immediate rematches are definitely not warranted when you get beat down for 5 rounds. And then they've already announced that Colby is going to be the guy. So I think there's some things at play there. Ben Askren says that, and he's been saying this, said it publicly. He told me on media day as well. He's said it several times since. He's going to London to troll Masvidal until, and he's going to call out the winner. I love that. It's refreshing.
Again, yeah, it is. But at the same time, I don't see either one of those guys giving Ben Askren any problems. So what do I know?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what comes next with Usman. We got Till. Wonderboy finally has a shot to maybe become or get a title shot once again. We got the cycle rolling again now that Woodley's out of that spot. And like you said, I don't think he's going to get the immediate rematch. There's actually no way he's going to get the immediate rematch, even with how many times he's defended. And, you look at guys like Stipe, you look at guys like Jose Aldo, they didn't get it. I don't see Woodley get it. Now, moving forward really quick, I want to talk about Cody Garbrandt and what happened there. Yes, it was a very exciting fight, but now you have a guy coming off 3 TKO losses. Yes, 2 of those losses were to TJ Dillashaw back-to-back, and then now you got this one. But I really couldn't help myself from saying, or at least thinking, I haven't seen any change here from Cody, and didn't really smarten up or learn from his mistakes. And I wonder if it's because Justin Buchholz has left. What do you think about that, and what do you think about Cody in this situation?
Yeah, very rarely do we see a guy lose 3 times in a row, especially in devastating fashion. Keep his spot. I think he definitely will. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think he'll get cut because Dana pretty much said as much at the presser. But yeah, this is interesting. I didn't really think about this until I saw it visually. You may have seen it too. Somebody put together a highlight reel that shows all 3 of those knockouts, both of the Dillashaw and the Pedro Munoz knockout in a row. And it's literally like the exact same thing every time. It's just Cody just swinging wild, getting clipped on the chin and just going flying like something out of Mike Tyson's Punch Out on NES, like Glass Joe. And I mean, it all comes down to the same thing. You just get in there overcommitting which is crazy. I mean, I don't know what the reason is. I mean, as far as the coaching or whatever the case, but yeah, you would think after it happens twice in a row, especially since we sort of saw a change in his demeanor, this approach, because I don't know that I've ever seen a fight, especially with the Dillashaw fights. Those guys hated each other. So there was always that animosity, all that beef and all that hype, trash talk, etc., leading up to the fight. But all his fights before that, he always was the kind of guy to get really, really just nasty. I always thought he was kind of a bully. He's the kind of guy that would get up in a guy's face at a weigh-in and push him and talk shit and everything. He didn't do that with Pedro. It was almost like I thought maybe he's kind of matured. He's a father now. Maybe he's learned from his mistakes, kind of humbled. And with Pedro, it was like all smiles, he didn't have to sit there and be all Mr. Intense all the time and like try to play this sort of facade, which, doesn't really fool anybody anyway. It's a defense mechanism. The Diaz brothers do it. It's a defense mechanism. You're not fooling anybody. Guys do that because they're scared. There's nothing wrong with being scared. I think it's annoying when dudes try to act like a tough guy to try to overcompensate for the fact that they're scared. Because it's nothing to be ashamed of. You should be scared. You're getting into a cage with another murderer who's going to try to take your head off. Of course, you're supposed to be scared, but you're getting in there and doing it, and that's what commands so much respect. So, with Cody, if you back up a few fights, Dominic Cruz, I thought, okay, this guy has proven me wrong on every level. He's not this immature, overly emotional kid who's not ready for the big game. He is very composed. He is an excellent fighter. He's a complete fighter, and this guy's going to be a champion for a long time. Boy, was I wrong about that. Because if he didn't learn his lesson from not one, but 2 knockouts from Dillashaw, he sure as hell got in there and did the same thing. And I hope he learns this time.
And you know what? Like you said, I don't think UFC is going to get rid of him. I think he's such a draw. People love when he fights. This is a very exciting fight, and it could have went either way. I mean, very well, Cody could have landed a punch. They were both kind of out on their feet for a second, were recovering, and then it was back and forth. Very exciting fight. But it just sucks when you see a guy coming off 2 or 3 now losses in a row. But you do have to keep in mind 2 of those were to TJ Dillashaw. I don't think you lose any brownie points, but it's just hard. Now, really quick, while we end on this note, do you think that, with fighters, when they get knocked out time after time, does it have an effect on their chin? Like, is it easier to get knocked out? Do you believe in that? And is Cody having an issue with that? Or what do you think there? Is that false?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think that. But I don't know, it's weird, though, because, like, some people don't seem to be as susceptible to it. You look at Alistair Overeem, for example. He's a guy who's been getting knocked out for 15 years or more, like you think back to like the Chuck Liddell fight at Pride, and then he's had some like really, really nasty KOs where he's just like face planted. But then he's also come in and shown a chin at times since then. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's a bigger guy. He's got a big old gigantic head, a big old thick skull as a heavyweight. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think it does have an effect, and it just varies from one person to the next. Chuck Liddell probably is the most interesting case study in that. He was a guy that, just once the chin sort of was gone, he never really was the same. Shogun, who was another guy, sort of old school guy who, he didn't fight the same. He just didn't, and you just kind of always just kind of set on, you just kind of were on eggshells, like, oh man, as soon as he gets touched, man, he's going to sleep. So, Fedor, great example too.
Yeah. So, as we get to the last 10 minutes of this podcast, there's a couple more fights that we definitely need to discuss. Zabit, man. Zabit versus Jeremy Stephens. Were you impressed? Because there's a lot of people who are saying, I'm really not that impressed with Zabit's performance. And with guys that pull that spin stuff, in different organizations, they come over the UFC, it doesn't work. But you have someone like Jeremy Stephens, who's, he is coming off a loss to Jose Aldo, but it was Jose Aldo. Were you impressed with Zabit's performance? Do you see him moving up further? And, at some point this year, getting a title shot if he keeps winning? Or what do you think? Do they take their time? What do you think about Zabit and his performance?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I told him as much, when I spoke to him at media day. But I think he's ranked at I don't think he's ranked technically in the top 10 yet. I haven't looked at the newest rankings, so he might have one or two more fights. But you also have to remember the division is going to be held up for a minute because you got Max Holloway now fighting for the interim lightweight title, which on a side note, I think they're doing actually to smoke Conor McGregor out of hiding, because he's gonna be going stir crazy sitting over in Ireland watching two guys that he's beaten both get championship gold around their waist while he's not, and then which would put either one of them in between him and Khabib. So but that aside, it was a beat. It's weird because I'll tell you this. It depends on what context you look at it in. Am I impressed? Yes, I'm impressed on many levels. Was it the most amazing jaw-dropping performance, the best fight that just made you go, oh, man, this guy is the next big thing? Well, not necessarily. But in the context of, number one, you had so many so-called experts that are like, oh, I can't wait for Jeremy Stephens to derail the hype train because the beat is not that great and blah, blah, blah. That seems to be all the rhetoric that I saw leading into this weekend. And when you also consider that he fought Jeremy Stephens, I mean, how good do you expect someone to look? I mean, the most impressive win that I can remember seeing over Jeremy Stephens from there's Jose Aldo, but also Frankie Edgar. That's impressive. When you get a guy like Frankie, where you're like, man, I don't know. He might, and then he gets clipped and he stumbled and he still ends up coming back to beat him. That's impressive. What we saw with Zabit and Jeremy Stephens was a dogfight. It was a war, and you get a crafty veteran like Stephens, and you're able to get the win. Hey, it doesn't have to be the prettiest win, and I certainly didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to go in there and walk over Jeremy Stephens. In fact, I didn't know what the hell was going to happen. I said, hell, Jeremy Stephens might go in there and just knock that guy's head into the third row.
There's a lot of excitement right now in the featherweight division. You got Yair. There's a bunch of guys. And then, when you get towards that top tier of that featherweight division, we're talking about some really interesting fights later on in 2019. And this card really felt like a lot of the new faces. We don't got to discuss it, but even Tisha Torres versus Zhang, I was really impressed with. It felt like there was a lot of new faces on this card that really made a really big impression. Now, moving forward, who would you like to see Zabit fight next this year?
Gosh. Okay. Well, so Jose Aldo's fight was just announced yesterday. I forget the guy's name.
Right? Is that who's fighting?
There you go. Yes. Okay. So, and prior to that, we know Brian Ortega was one of the Jose Aldo fights. So, I mean, I think that's the one I want, but I don't know. I mean, is Zabit going to be able to jump that high up in the rankings? I mean, who else do we have at featherweight that's viable? You beat Jeremy Stephens. Frankie Edgar. There's another one. Frankie Edgar is. You know what? I think that's going to be my choice. Either Frankie Edgar or Brian Ortega.
I 100% agree with you there. Imagine that T-City versus Zabit. I think I could see Zabit versus Ortega going on next. So let us know what you guys think on Twitter, down below here in the comments as well. Moving forward, let's discuss one of the biggest fights that everyone was really looking forward to, and ended in an injury that had nothing to do with the fight. We got Johnny Walker, who's really made a huge splash last year, moving into this year, and he's such an interesting character. Really kind of a nerdy guy, but so violent, and you can't help but love this guy. What did you think about his performance? And just really quick fun fact, in his last two fights, he's only spent 51 seconds inside the octagon, which is amazing.
Yeah, and his last fight was just 28 days prior to this one. And, you're not talking about a tomato can when you talk about Misha Serkinov. You're talking about a fucking killer. You're talking about a tank. And he just went in there and, just ran through him, which is, these fast finishes are great too, but it also doesn't really show you, how does he last through 3 rounds or 5 rounds. And that's kind of one of the things that he brought up to in the media scrum, actually in the back, because I talked to him on media today. I said, look, man, so I'll give you a little before and after. So on media today, I talked to him and said, man, you've looked amazing, very impressive. This division has traditionally not had a lot of depth lately because we've seen some defectors, or we've seen some guys retire, some other guys, drop down in weight or leave the UFC. And so it's kind of yours for the taking. And he said to me that he doesn't feel like he's ready for maybe another year or two, and he wants to get more fights. He wants to get more experience. He said, I feel ready for Jon Jones now. He said, but I want to be sure. Which, okay, I mean, to each his own. I mean, I can't tell the guy how to manage his career. But after that win over Misha Cirkunov, and we were in the back, I reminded him of his words from media day, and I said, I think a lot of people would beg to differ after your performance tonight. What are your thoughts? And, he still said the same thing. So, but yeah, how can you not love the kid?
Well,
and,
he wants
he's got to stop. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's funny because, again, I told you Dana had mentioned at the presser that, they weren't planning to put him in there within, any top level guys anytime soon. But yeah, just the very next day, you start hearing about, that they want Alexander Gustafsson. So, I mean, I think he's a lot closer to fighting for a title than he's leading on if, especially if he beats Gustafsson in impressive fashion. Can you imagine that? I mean, there's just, you pretty much have to make him and Jon Jones immediately if he's able to, finish Gustafsson.
And this really reminds me a lot of Yair's rise and when he got matched up against Frankie Edgar. And that was the big moment where we were like, all right, now he's on the ground. We haven't seen this guy on the ground yet. And like you said, we've seen him come out fast. And I've watched some of his older fights before he was in the UFC, and he has made the mistake of coming out fast, trying to finish a fight, and got caught for it. So I would really like to see him take a step ahead, but not too far. When you think of Alexander Gustafsson, it's definitely a big risk. But maybe he can learn a lot, like we saw with Yair after he lost to Frankie Edgar. But I don't want to see Johnny Walker disappear for a year, like we saw with Yair after a loss either. So I don't know. Let us know what you guys think down below. Do you see him fighting in the next couple of months, even though he does have an injury from the worm of all things?
One caveat too, by the way. So we were talking about potential opponents for Jon Jones, and it just made me think of something when I was talking about people who have retired, and I was mainly referring to Rumble Johnson, and he recently came out and said, well, he would come out of retirement for Jon Jones, and it's so sad because that is the one that got away, in my opinion. If there's one MMA fight of all time that I would consider the one that got away, it is that one, because that fight almost happened. And mind you, it didn't, because Johnny Bones got himself in trouble, and then the fight, didn't end up happening. So yeah, even though Rumble lost to DC twice, I just think stylistically the matchup with him and Jon Jones is very, very intriguing. But if you see how big he is, I mean, he looks like he ate Daniel Cormier. I mean, he's a giant. How does he get down to 205? I don't know. I mean, if he's going to do it, he better start now. He better stop lifting so damn much and stop eating so much and start doing some cardio, because he's massive.
Yeah, when it comes to that whole situation, I think the UFC should definitely jump on that. But yeah, this is a guy that we saw at so many different weight classes. We saw Rumble at what was the lowest that he went down to? Didn't he go down to welterweight at one time? And then now he's humongous, like you said, and he's actually working with BKFC, I believe, right now. But you bring up a lot of good points there. They even had a face-off, him and Jon Jones, and they were kind of friends. That's the one that got away. I don't see him fighting DC again, but really interesting that you bring that up there. So last but not least, I think there was one more fight I really wanted to discuss. Oh, you brought up Conor McGregor and the whole situation of what's going on with Max and Dustin. Let's talk about this before we end this podcast. They offered Conor and Cowboy co-main event. What do you think about that? Are you not surprised that Conor would turn that down? And should he get a co-main event, or should he be a main event? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know, man. The guy just he seems to be, I don't know, based on the feedback that we get from Uncle Dana and based on the things that have happened in the past, he seems like he's a pain in the ass to deal with behind closed doors. And on one hand, I don't fault him for that. You know, I mean, he's a guy who knows his worth and you know, he's willing to demand it. But at the same time, it's like, you know, he doesn't have a title, and neither does Cowboy. I mean, he was the guy that called out Cowboy Cerrone. So the fact that they weren't able to put that fight together is just a travesty, because when you talk about the one that got away, that's another one. I mean, you know, when RDA was supposed to fight Conor McGregor and then
broke his toe.
Yeah, and then it ended up becoming, you know, Nick Diaz. I was so against that. I wanted it to be Donald Cerrone. Cerrone claims that it was like this close to happening, and then they switched it up on him. How could you not want to see that fight? I mean, again, shame on Conor. Shame on Conor for coming out on Twitter, probably drunk on Proper 12 and smoking Mike Tyson's weed. But, you know, he called him out on Twitter, you know, after he beat up my buddy Alex Hernandez. Cerrone did. And Conor said, hey, he said, bring, you know, something to the effect, yeah, I'd love to see you in there, bring that intensity, you know, with me, or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, who wouldn't want to see that, right?
Really impressive win over Hernandez as well. I mean, you spoke about that and the rising talent of him. I was blown away that Cowboy was able to get that victory. I was like, wow, I was very impressive.
Who's better than motivated Cowboy? I don't know.
Last but not least, I can't skip over this. This is the last thing that I wrote down here. Diego Sanchez, man, 15 years doing it inside the UFC. The only guy left from Ultimate Fighter Season 1. Beats Mickey Gall. People could say, oh, it was too soon for Mickey. But wow, this definitely shows you that he's not going anywhere anytime soon unless he is forced out of the UFC, man. He's still got it. He's still fierce and exciting. What did you think about that performance?
Yeah, again, just like every other fight, you know, I said that this one has a whole story unto itself. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. But yeah, let's just start at the very beginning. So I talked to both guys on media day. You know, I asked them how the fight came together, and you know, it's a no-brainer. You know, I felt like for Mickey Gall, it's actually kind of a perfect situation, because, you know, here's a guy who we know his chin's kind of compromised, or at least I thought so. You know, but you know. He wasn't fighting an elite striker either, though. So, I mean, you know, it was also kind of a low risk for Diego. But it was kind of a low reward fight as well, because, you know, it's like you got 40 fights, you're fighting a guy with 6 fights. Just the fact that that Gall has a little bit of hype and everything like that, it made for an interesting matchup, you know, because people, for whatever reason, they just like Mickey Gall, even though his resume doesn't have a lot of impressive wins. People just like to see him. He's got good personality. He's training with Joe Schilling and Matt Brown and these guys out at the Elevation team in California. So, you know, he's been working on striking, and you already know he's a stud of a grappler. Diego Sanchez is a grappling first kind of a guy who also can scrap. So, yeah, this was a crazy fight. Now, there were some other things that happened. God, I wish I would have known about it, because I didn't know about it until like yesterday. But apparently Mickey Gall bit Diego. Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not. I never saw any video of that. I mean, there's a little something on a mark on his chest, but I don't know. I don't know what that's for. How do you bite a guy with your mouthpiece in?
I was thinking that too.
How do you bite a guy with your mouthpiece in? I don't know, man. Maybe Diego's got some kind of funky ringworm or some shit on his chest. I don't know. But I would think that would be the type of thing that would make Uncle Dana just cut the guy immediately, especially the fact that, you know, he's not exactly a huge asset to the UFC. I mean, he's just kind of a guy who's been out of place. And that's not to knock the guy. You know, he just needs more development. I've told him so much at the media day. I said, look, you and I both know you're still the guy with the golden ticket. You know, there's a ton of welterweights in this country, in the world, that would love to be in your position. I mean, there's guys in LFA that are, you know, 11-1, 10-0. You know, I mean, there's got all over the place. And here you are, guy who's 5-1, and 2 of those 5, you got Mike Jackson, who doesn't really fight You know, I mean, he dabbles, and then you got CM Punk, who completely sucks. So, I don't know.
Another guy who was in the right place.
Sage Northcutt, but Sage Northcutt, you know, can't grapple his way out of a paper bag. So, I mean, I kind of figured that, you know, he would be able to submit Sage. But anyway, what did you say?
On that note, you know, Mickey was really at the right place at the right time. You know how the regional scene works. Like, you could fight, you know, 4 times, 5 times in a year. Mickey Gall got matched up perfectly the night that Dana White was going to be there. Had a great performance. They're looking for CM Punk's opponent. But I will say this, though. Mickey Gall's striking definitely improved. We saw in the first round, he definitely gassed it. To strike on somebody like Diego Sanchez, you can strike as much as you want. The guy's going to eat all those strikes unless you're an elite kind of a striker like, you know, some of the other guys in the division that we've seen Diego struggle with, like Matt Brown or somebody, you know. So Mickey Gall, I mean, I don't see him getting kicked out of the UFC or anything like that, but this was definitely out of his league as we saw here, and for us to see that bite mark leaves us questioning, like, what really happened there. So we'll see what's next.
I'm sorry, one more caveat too about that. So he there was, you know, his post on Instagram that came out where he was like, you know, I apologize for my performance. I had a really bad weight cut. That to me seems pretty weird because, you know, I told you I was face to face with him at media day. I saw him. He's not that big a guy. He's definitely not bigger than me, and I've made 170 many, many times with no problem. So if that's true what he says, then he's just not doing something right. And furthermore, you know, again, media day was what, Wednesday, and the weigh-in is Friday morning. He didn't look bad at the weigh-in at all. He did not look bad at the weigh-in, and he certainly didn't look bad at media day. He looked great. So I have a hard time with that one.
So this is the last thing we got to talk about. I like to rate these pay-per-views. Out of 10, what would you give this as a rating? And keeping in mind, you know, we had, I think, over 1 million views on ESPN. I really like what they're doing there, showing the prelims on there. There's a lot more people discussing UFC now. So with that in mind, what do you rate this card?
Well, so if I have to rate the overall card, including the pay-per-view, I'm going to have to go with 8.5 because I think 9 is too high because we've seen better. But if we're excluding the pay-per-view, which it wasn't bad, but I'm saying if we exclude the pay-per-view and it's only the prelims, from the Fight Pass prelims to the ESPN prelims, it's a 9. You know, it's a 9. The other half a point comes from the pay-per-view. Could have been a little bit more exciting, and it certainly wasn't as exciting as the undercard. But overall, excellent.
Yeah, the only thing that could have made it better was, you know, seeing Usman get a finish, and he had a dominant performance. John Bones getting a finish because, you know, the UFC doesn't have stars right now. So it's nice to see John back in action. Let us know what you guys think down below here in the comments. Rodney, you know what we like to do at this point in the interview. I hand the imaginary microphone over to you. If you have sponsors, shout-outs, social media tags, anything at all, the floor is now all yours.
Shout out to my boy Tom Galicchio with KO Candy Services. Also, shout out to the U.S. Army, which keeps my bills paid. U.S. military altogether, the U.S. Air Force as well. And yeah, man, find me at Rodney James 138 on social media. Not safe for work. I am vulgar. I give no fucks. I'm a savage, and I make no apologies for that. I'm Rodney James Edgar on Instagram. And, of course, MMAsoldier.net is my site. I'm with Cageside Press now, though, too. So check out all my videos on Cageside Press on the YouTube channel. We got a lot of great content this weekend, man. It was a ton of fun covering this fight.
And whoever's doing your guys' Instagram page is doing a phenomenal job as well. I saw a lot of coverage on the Cageside Press Instagram page.
Shit, you know what? I just realized I don't even follow them. I need to. I just got with Cageside Press. So
I saw that, and I saw that you changed your Twitter name back to your actual name and not Rogue. So I was a little confused for a second.
Yeah. Well, you know, I went Rogue for a while, man. I had to go Rogue because, you know, I was just I don't know. I was just going through a lot of things. You know, my MMA media career was experiencing some ups and downs. You know, I had to kind of had to get back on my feet. You know, I kept grinding, you know, thanks to people like you encouraging me and inspiring me. Not only with your work, but also with your kind words and having me as a guest. And a few other people, James Lynch. There's a lot of guys out there. They know who they are. Kind of helping coach me through that adversity. I'm back, man. I'm back on top.
Oh, yeah, and we're so excited to see it. Thank you so much for joining us once again here on Pure Evil MMA. Rodney, enjoy the rest of your day, and I want to thank you so much for your time once again.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, brother.
Thank you, and thank you for your service.
All right, brother. Later.
Later. There you guys go. Rodney James Edgar joining us once again here on Pure Evil MMA. That does it for me, episode number 206 here. Guys, enjoy the rest of your day. If you have any questions, let us know. First off, let us know what you thought about this. Let us know what you thought about UFC 235. Can you believe 235? When was the first card you seen? Let us know down in the comments. And what was your favorite fight? Make sure to follow me on Twitter at evil_echo. That's EVIL_ECCO. Also on... Wait, did I just say Twitter? Yeah, Twitter at evil_echo. That's EVIL_ECCO. Also on Instagram at pureevilmma_. Facebook, if you fool around on Facebook, at pureevilmmas, lowercase s. And pureevilmma.com for all the latest interviews. Hope you guys enjoyed episode number 206. I'm Evil Eddie, and remember, win knuckles to the end. Remember, without evil, there's no purity. Behave yourselves.